I come to you from Windy Point. And I come to you from Windy Point because of one very, very special type of tree. That type of tree being oaks. Oaks are the most important type of tree that exists within North America. There's over 91 species of trees, of oak trees, that live within North America and are native to North America. And that is because of the benefits that they provide to their ecosystem and to humans. Not only modern day humans, but humans for the past thousands and thousands of years have used oaks, and they have used them to their benefit maybe more than any other type of tree, at least in North America. Now, I'm sure that we have all heard of oaks, and I'm sure you can assume just because you've heard of them that they are important to the ecosystem, and maybe even that they are important to us as humans. But I don't think most people understand the true value that oaks serve us as humans and the greater ecosystem that they inhabit. I think we need to start at the soil. Now, when we look at soil, trees and soil and the effects that trees have on soil may not be the first thought we have. But one of the most important factors for determining soil health is within the microinvertebrates that exist within the soil. These microinvertebrates and microarthropods are what show soil health may be better than anything else. And this is demonstrated in a paper that was released back in May of 2022. In this paper, they worked within a purely oak forest. The oak forest consisted of a species called Quercus frenetto. And it showed that in a forest where light burns continually happen on a regular pattern, not too much, not too little, that these organisms would stay in check. They wouldn't outstretch their bounds, they wouldn't go overboard, they would stay within check, and you would find a sort of equilibrium within the habitat. Nothing too much, nothing too little. It was the sweet spot for that ecosystem to thrive. And now let's connect this back to oaks, because you're probably thinking, well, microarthropods, like, why do I care about that? It's because they are directly connected to the presence of those oaks in that oak forest. Oaks, especially, are a highly burn tolerant type of tree across the entire genus, across all 91 species that exist here within the United States. And this is no difference for this oak right here. This silver-leafed oak is adapted to fire. And so whatever kind of community that you have going on down here in this soil is specifically adapted to also withstand fire, and withstand fire within a forested ecosystem. And this ecosystem could not be forested if it was, filled with a bunch of trees that weren't adapted to fire, such as these oaks were. Another incredibly important topic to point upon with oaks in relation to soil and soil health is oaks' mycorrhizal nature. Mycorrhizal nature, or an oak's propensity to be mycorrhizal, means that it sets up relationships with fungus in the ground, mycorrhizal fungus, and those mycorrhizae, which are the fungus, they go through and they attach themselves to the oak roots, and then they can set up connections between the trees. And some studies have shown within recent years that these connections between the trees are ways that these trees actually communicate through mycorrhizal networks that are spreading throughout the ground, through these mycelium within the fungal tissue. And let's say we had just any old tree out here. Let's say we had a birch. Let's say we had a maple. Maybe they would support some fungus, but they do not support mycorrhizal fungus quite like oaks do. Only one other type of tree does, and those are pines, which is why in an ecosystem like this, you have so many pines, just like that one there, and oaks, just like this one here. Within these ecosystems, you get very specific fungi and soil biotic communities. One prime example of this is when you're out walking in the woods. Anytime you're out walking in the woods and you see a red mushroom, that is a great identifier. Maybe not 100% of the time, but most of the time, anytime you see a red mushroom or any kind of mushroom with red pigmentation, that is a perfect sign of mycorrhizal activity, and there's probably an oak somewhere near you. Now, since we're trying to highlight the importance of oaks across all of North America, let's take a trip and let's visit a study that was done up in the Pacific Northwest. In this study, they were able to find that within this ecosystem, that there are over 300 species that coexist with these oaks and that use these oaks as a host or use these oaks for some point within their life cycle. Now, this specifically talks about vertebrates, but I would like to connect this right here to something that is directly next to me. And this something is an oak gall. As I look at these galls here, these galls are product of a, maybe not a mutualistic relationship, more of a parasitic relationship between an insect and the oak tree. This oak tree provides the perfect home for this insect to lay an egg. So this insect will fly onto an oak branch, it will deliver its eggs into the branch, then the oak has a swelling reaction, and the oak swells up to massive size surrounding those eggs, just as you would if you had some infection or a pimple or something like that. And then it creates a wonderful little home for this insect to stay throughout the winter and then come out in the next spring through little tiny holes like that one there that was made. And so these are empty, there's nothing left in here. This little larva has hatched and it has come out and is now probably a little beetle out flying around looking for its very own oak branch to lay an egg. Now, as shown in the study, a lot of these oaks up in the Pacific Northwest, up in the Klamath Mountain area, these oaks were becoming extremely susceptible to fires, which is unusual. As we already talked about, most of these oaks are really well adapted to fire. However, they cannot withstand super intense fire, and due to encroachment and lack of regular burning, these oaks have become put under extreme stress, and their numbers are decreasing. However, what about all the rest of the United States? What goes on there? Are there any critically endangered species that might use those oaks? Indeed there are. Let's take a look at an example from Pennsylvania. As the study shows, in late October 2019, there were studies that were being conducted upon the spotted turtle in Pennsylvania. Spotted turtles in Pennsylvania are endangered. Now, these turtles, when they were looking for a place to hibernate through the winter or brumate, they go through and they found a perfect oak tree to do that within. And it wasn't because it was, just some old tree that was there. It was because it was a swamp white oak. Swamp white oaks primarily inhabit swamps or areas that are prone to flooding. And these turtles, when it gets really cold, do not want to winter under the water. They want to be safe, they want to be dry, they want to seek shelter. And the perfect place for them to do this was within mature swamp white oaks, Quercus bicolor. These turtles would overwinter in these trees, and they would overwinter for multiple years in a row in the same tree. They would return to the tree and they would find themselves sitting in these trees, crawling up within the cavities of these old trees. And in this study, it showed that these spotted turtles returned repeatedly to this tree even once hibernation was done, created a home for them. It was a place of shelter, a place for them to breed, a place of them to lay their eggs, a place for them to live multiple cycles within their life, be able to continue on the next generation for this endangered species. While there aren't too many really big, really old oak trees that are here in this section of Mount Lemmon, I think one of the most incredible sights that I've ever seen is one of those very old, very gigantic oak trees that resides back in the Driftless area of Wisconsin, right in the southwestern corner of Wisconsin. I am on my way out to what is known as Heathcliff. There's one thing that stands out above all others, and I'll show you that right now. Now this here is the oldest and most incredibly, impossibly gigantic oak tree I have ever seen in my life. And to highlight the value of a canopy and what these oaks do just because they are trees and have leaves and have thick, lush canopies, we'll go down to the U of A and highlight what makes a canopy so special. As unexpected as it may seem, I think the perfect place to showcase why oaks are so important, especially to us as humans, as modern day humans, when we walk around in our cities, on campus here at the U of A. Why are oaks so important? Have you ever sat underneath that little hill that's outside of the student union and sat underneath the trees to get some shade, to relax from this intense heat that we have down here in southern Arizona? If you have, you can thank an oak. And you can thank this species of oak right here. This is a Texas black oak. And it is responsible for giving you shade if you've ever sat on that hill. With its strong, sturdy, dense crown, it provides shade that many other trees, such as the sycamore here, wouldn't quite give, or a lot of the Palo Verdes, which are also native here in Arizona. Now, because these oaks have been planted in such areas as this is the pharmacy campus, they have been allowed to provide ecosystem services to us as humans and to the greater ecosystem that surrounds Tucson. And these canopies are home to the fruits of the oak tree, acorns. Acorns are a invaluable resource for the likes of humans, past, present, and the other mammalian or birds, reptiles, whatever it may be, any sort of organism that feeds upon them. They provide a great food source full of fats and proteins that are hard to come by a lot of the time in such harsh conditions where oaks love to live. As highlighted in this study, Native Americans of the Midwest and Eastern United States used to put their trees, their oak trees that surrounded them, into mast. Typically, a mast year is a year in which the conditions were prime. They were ripe, they were prime, they were perfect for all the oaks to communicate, who knows how, maybe through mycorrhizae and maybe through fungal networks. There was a signal that was sent out through a group of oaks, the population of oaks within one area, and they all decided that, hey, this is the year that we are going to create all of these acorns and drop them all at once. If you were ever to be walking through a forest that was enmassed, you would know, because it would sound like rain that was falling. And Native Americans, for thousands of years, would trick these trees, or they would simulate conditions for these trees that would signal them to go into mast. So every single year, they would have bounties of acorns. Now, within these mast years, they were times of bounty. One of the more interesting examples of this masting is right here on campus, right outside the student union as well. If you were walking around any time between November and I guess now, you would have been able to walk by and see these olive oaks, which are right here, dropping tons of acorns, as you can see here in these clips. These acorns all came out at once, and it wasn't all of the oaks that were putting out acorns like this. Only the olive oaks, and only this species of oak, went into mast. So somehow, they grouped up together, knew what they were doing, and then released all of their acorns all at once. And there's these bounties of acorns that are actively falling around me right now that have not been utilized by any wildlife in the area, just because these oaks aren't native to here. This is actually a Mediterranean oak. Kind of interesting. And so we started with the soils. Then from the soils we moved our way up, and we saw how animals, humans, and others use the main portion of the tree here, the limbs and the stem of the tree, or the trunk. As we go up, we've seen how canopies can affect us too as humans, and what other benefits they can provide, such as dropping acorns, and how those acorns provide benefits to not only us humans in the past, present, but also all of the flora and all of the fauna that has been around that is able to use those fats and those calorie-dense fruits such as those acorns. And after considering all those factors, I think it's pretty hard to not consider oaks the most important type of tree that exists within North America, maybe even the world.